Hi everyone and welcome to manredFC again. So it's now that time of the year where we're looking towards the next season. You'd have to say we've done fairly well, but it's always onward and upwards. And how are we going to do that? I mean, it's fairly straightforward, I think. As you can see to my right, it's through the transfer window. Now what I've tried to do is create a realistic ins and outs type scenario. Now I know everyone can turn FIFA on or Football Manager, and I've spent many a week on Football Manager, and I'm aware that you can make all sorts of ridiculous signings. I've seen a lot of videos saying, yeah, let's just get Messi. He doesn't want to play at Barcelona anymore, so get him in at United. Yeah, great. What's that, about 5 million a week for a salary? Yeah, brilliant. So I've tried to make it as realistic as possible. What I'm doing is I'm incorporating salary and transfer fee. And what I've tried to do, especially the United players, is err on the side of caution, but also with the players incoming, then potentially look at the upper echelon of what we'd expect to pay. So obviously we're always about balancing the books here at Manchester United, aren't we? You know, that's what they're about, accountancy 101. So we're never going to see an outlay like Manchester City or PSG. You know, the net spend tends to be around the 50 to 70 mark, doesn't it? So I've tried to keep it in that sort of ballpark. So it'd be really good to get your views and opinions on this. So before we start, if you could please subscribe to the channel, it'd be really, really helpful. But we'll get straight on with it. I'm going to bring up a graphic, and it's got all the players that I think are either surplus to requirements or basically just on the periphery of the squad that I think we should potentially get rid of, in order to kind of allow the players to come in that are really going to make that impact and difference. And I think the players coming in and the players going out will allow us to really push close to the top two. And that is the challenge. We want to start looking to win trophies and going for the Premier League. You know, I don't want to keep floundering around and going, do you know what, yeah, third's great. Got to a semi-final, we've nearly got to a final, we won a European League, you know, we've won the FA Cup, the League Cup, brilliant. I want us to be really challenging, not constantly looking up at Liverpool and City and kind of hiding away from the fans, because they tend to, and they've had a bit of a monopoly of the league of late, haven't they? So as you can see, my starting player is Romero. Now, he has done absolutely nothing wrong. He's a wonderful number 2, but as we saw from the semi-finals, is that Ollie doesn't really fancy him in the big games, so he always tends to get dropped. So that's a bit of a problem, isn't it? If you're not going to rely on your number 2 to really come in for the big games, then why is he there? Great number 2, but we've got Joel Pereira, we've got Kovar, but we've also got one man called Dean Henderson that can come in. Now Romero, he's on £50,000 a week, and his contract's until 2021. Now that totals a 600 grand outlay for the term, and I've also said we'll probably get about 5 million of a transfer fee for him. So that's, you know, fairly conservative, not too much. I've then gone a bit of a spanner in the works here, and maybe some of you might not agree, and I did kind of think for and against this, but the reason I've gone for Delot to go is because I think we've got an even better right back in Ethan Laird just behind him. Now Delot will also generate a higher income, which is what we need when we're looking at the transfers we want to bring in. Now Delot isn't on a lot. I think he's on about 25 grand until 2023, which equates to about 3.9 to 4 million pounds overall for his contract. But I think we could probably push to 20 million for a transfer fee. You may not agree with that, you may think that's a bit too ambitious, but why not? He's very young, he's proven that going forward he's very effective, so why not? Let's ask for that sort of fee. The next one, I don't think anyone's going to really be surprised at this one, is Mr. Injury Table himself. Mr. Phyllis Jones likes tackling with his face and his head as much as he does with his feet, and obviously his expressions have become more of a meme than his abilities on the pitch. Now I feel sorry for Phil Jones. He's been plagued by injury when he first signed. Obviously Sir Alex waxed lyrical about him, but he hasn't fulfilled the potential. Getting into his late 20s now, he's on 75 grand a week, and recently signed a 5-year deal, didn't he? So I've got him until 2023, which means his contract is worth £12 million. Now, if we can get £10 million for him in a transfer fee, I think we've done particularly well there. And I think, you know, 10 million is about right for him. You could potentially get a bit more, depending if the club feel quite excited about purchasing him and whether they need a centre-back or not. I've then gone, obviously, a very straightforward one is Marcus Rojo. He's been out on loan for the last season. He's on an 80 grand a week salary until 2021, which equates to about £1 million until the end of his term. Now, I've been quite generous and ambitious here and said we could get £5 million for him for a transfer fee, and I don't see why not. He's still a useful left-footed centre-back, but to be honest, if we just get rid of him for free, it's not too much of a difference to our overall kind of income. The next one, again, I wasn't really sure, but the reason I've gone for Eric Bailly to go is, again, his injury record isn't good enough for us. He's constantly injured and he's too erratic. He doesn't allow us to play from the back really calmly. So I've got him going, and obviously he's on 80 grand a week until 2023 because he had his options for 2 years on top of his 4-year deal back when we signed him, which comes to £8.3 million just for the salary. And then I think we could probably push for £20 million in the transfer market. The reason I think that is because he can be very good. And if he goes to the right club and he's at the right age, I think they'll get a good player out of him. The next one, it's probably the worst kept secret in the last 12 months, is that Mike Smalling, as LVG like to call him, has been on loan at Roma. They want him. We're obviously not going to play very smoothly with them because we want to get some money for him because he's been so good in Serie A and been in their team of the season. He's on £70,000 a week until 2022, which equates to £7.3 million. Now, I think we could easily get £20 million for him, if not more, because he has been that good, and I'm sick of United lowballing themselves. Why can't we ask for a bit more? Smalling arguably is our third best centre-back, potentially on a par with Victor Lindelof. Would you sell Lindelof for £20 million? Harry Maguire? Probably not. So why would we sell Chris Smalling? And then we've got Jesse Lingard. Now, Jesse Lingard, he's just been really poor over the last 18 months. Obviously, he's had a few issues personally, but that, sadly, isn't something we can just allow to continue to happen because it is Manchester United and the demands and the expectations are so high. Now, he's on a 75 grand a week contract until 2021, which equals just under £1,900,000. But I think we could get a good £15 million for him if we sold him this summer. Very useful player. I could see him being at an Everton, maybe a club like that, because he is very, very good off of the ball. I just think he struggles when he's playing for such a club with such an expectation, and we really ask a lot of him to be creative, and he really struggles with that. So I think he needs to go for the betterment of his career. The next one, who seems to have fallen off a cliff under Ollie, is Andreas Pereira. Now, he's got a contract until 2023, but it's not very much. It's £30,000 a week. I say not very much. Obviously, it's a lot of money, but not for a player. And that equals £1 million over the term. And I think you could get £10 million. Valencia like him. I think Granada like him. There's a few teams in Spain that I could see going for him. And again, he's quite young, so you get good value for him now. I think 10 million is about right. The next one, he's obviously gone, but you've got to equate in the money it's equalled. Now, I've been conservative here. I think it's actually more, but I've got 400k that he was on a week, and that grew up to 500 depending on appearances for till 2022, which obviously is £42 million. I think it was more than that, and it was actually reported as being 51, but I'll keep it at 42 just because that's what I've worked towards. Last but not least, again, not really too fussed with this one. It's Juan Mata. Now, he's on a big wedge. He's on 135k a week. He did take a pay cut in his last contract with us, and he's here till 2021. I don't think you get a transfer fee for him, so that contract's only worth 1.6. Now, if you see him being kind of more of an ambassadorial role, he stays. You kind of keep him there and then transition him into a coach maybe, or working, behind the scenes for Manchester United when he retires. So, again, he's not going to make a huge difference to our income, really. The total for the fees, the transfers, and the contract kind of terms is 182.2 million. So it's just shy of 200. Now, I've gone for the typical United net spend, which is £70 million. That could be less, it could be more. I've read that we have 100 million in reserve, but is that accurate? Your guess is as good as mine. But I've gone with 70, kind of just in the midline, which equals 252.5 million. Now, the three players that I think would really make a difference are as follows. Now, the first one is obviously the most obvious transfer that anyone's ever spoken about in the history of man. but it doesn't make it any more, or any less, should I say, important and imperative. Jadon Sancho has to come in to Manchester United. He is everything we're looking for. His age is perfect. He's an English player. He knows our players, and it looks like he wants to come. The stumbling block, obviously, at the minute is how we're agreeing this deal. Now, I've got his salary, because it's been reported of what he's done at Dortmund, as sitting at a basic 200k a week for us for 5 years, so until 2025, which equates to a £52 million outlay. Now, I've added 108 million for a transfer fee. Now, that equals 160, which is obviously quite a lot. But the way transfers tend to work is that they're structured. So even though I've said 108 million overall, chances are we'd only be spending 50, 60, 70 this summer, and then the rest would come out in instalments and add-ons and incentive-based payments. So I've gone with a very basic kind of idea here that what we make and what we spend should be totaled. But that's not technically how it works. Sancho is obviously going to be the right winger, and it's important that we replace basically a position that we haven't had fulfilled for a number of years now, and we're relying on a 17, just turned 18-year-old to make it his own, having played for the youth team for a number of years. Now, Greenwood's been fantastic, but he is not a natural right winger. So Sancho is really important here. Now, when we're looking at the stats for Jadon Sancho, and I'll just get them here. We've looked at these in a video before, but he primarily plays from the right wing, but obviously can play along the line. Now, the really impressive thing about Jadon Sancho is his stats, and they've been that good for the last 2 seasons. So you can't really say, that he's not going to produce here, because Germany's a really difficult league, and he's been really good when he's played for England as well. So the season just gone, he was a part of 33 goals. Playing from the right-hand side. Now, his strengths are dribbling, playing through balls, passing, key passes, but really importantly, finishing. Now, that's something we really lack from the wings. I would call Greenwood a number 9, and you'll see when I go through my team where I'm going to put Greenwood, but that's a little hint there. Jadon Sancho, scoring from the right, makes that position a real threat, because he can go on the outside, but he can also come in. Now, his weakness is being defensively aware and his contribution to the defensive side of the game, but you've probably got the best defensive fullback in the world behind him in Aaron Wan-Bissaka. What's Wan-Bissaka's weakness? Going forward. So you give it to the man that can, and that is Mr. Jadon Sancho. So I think Jadon is a hugely important signing that we need to make, and it also signals some intent. If we say we're making a £100 million signing, Jadon Sancho, the most hottest prospect in world football currently, then you have to say that is a phenomenal starting point for Manchester United, and this has been rumbling on for months. So Jadon Sancho has to come in. My second choice, and I kind of debated this within myself, but I've gone for the man to my right now. It's Ndidi at Leicester. Now, it was either Ndidi or Declan Rice. The reason I didn't say Declan Rice is I think he'll be a bit more expensive. He's a bit younger. And I think Chelsea are really interested in buying him, so he might not be very easy to acquire. Now, Ndidi is only on £75,000 a week at Leicester. So I think if we offered him 100, which is what I've got, for 5 years, I think he'd probably accept it. And that is worth 26 million. Now, his transfer fee, obviously Leicester could ask for whatever they wanted. They don't have to sell. I mean, Maguire was 80 million, and look how that turned out. A truckload of money. They were after 80 million for Chilwell, again, not worth it. So my transfer value of 50 million for him might be a bit off the mark. But Transfer Market, who tend to be quite reliable, value him at 40. So I've kind of just added a 25% kind of increase there to just try and get him over the line. So that's Ndidi. Now, obviously, Ndidi fills the defensive midfield position, and he's done it fantastically well for Leicester City. You've got to remember that Conte was their last CDM, and he is probably the best in the world in that position. So coming in to replace him at a club like Leicester is a huge ask, but he has been nothing short of phenomenal. Average rating of 7.43 in that position. No real weaknesses. Now, that's really important. Okay, he likes to tackle. He's a very strong tackler. He's good in the air and he can dribble and he intercepts the ball, which is exactly what we need. We need a younger, more mobile Matic, and that is exactly what indeed he does. He's only 23, so he's got time on his side, and obviously we like younger players. Just look at who Ollie's signed so far. So I think Ndidi would be a phenomenal signing at CDM for us. If we could get him over the line, I don't think he would cost too much, and I think he would transform that area. Obviously, Matic has probably got a year to 18 months left in him, so you could easily transition him and Ndidi between one another for that role, and I think it would be really, really, really effective. Now, the next signing, again, very hot prospect, very young player, is Upamecano. Now, he's a centre-back that has got a release clause of £45 million. Now that, in today's market, is an absolute steal. Nathan Ake went for 41 to Man City. Who would you rather have at centre-back? It's a no-brainer for me. Upamecano is not on a lot of money, so I think we could get him for £50,000 a week for 5 years, which would total 13 million. Now Upamecano, when we're looking at him, would be a perfect partner for a Harry Maguire or a Victor Lindelof, because I don't think there's much difference between the two. And actually, Lindelof has shown me a bit more spirit and leadership in the last few games than Harry Maguire. But Harry Maguire at his best is obviously fantastic and brilliant in the air. So I think Upamecano really offers some good threat and competition for both of them. But I actually think he would start. He's a left-footed centre-back. He's played the majority of his games there. And his average rating is 7.13. He played 38 times, so he's not injury-prone. No real weaknesses to speak of. He's a very good passer, he can tackle, but more importantly, he concentrates. What have we lacked at the back? That moment of concentration. Left-footed centre-back that we don't have, that concentrates and likes to dribble out from the back. What are we playing? Football from the goalkeeper, playing it short, defenders that dribble out from the back. Upamecano can do that and has been doing that in a very good league. He's 21, so he's obviously very, very young. He's a good height. He's very quick, which obviously Harry Maguire isn't, and sadly neither is Victor Lindelof. So he could be a perfect partner to both centre-backs. So I think Upamecano would be a wonderful signing for us, and would transform our defensive qualities along with Ndidi. Now, what I've got here is our total. So our total for Jadon Sancho on his own is 160. So if I add these up, we can do this live. There we go. So 160 for Jadon Sancho. That's a lot of money, isn't it? 160 million for Jadon Sancho. Ndidi, 76 million. Here we go. And then 58 for Upamecano, plus 58 million. That is £294 million. Now, that is £40 million more than I've managed to get in through the door. So you can see why I've had to add some players. So it'd be up to obviously Ollie to be able to have those conversations potentially to get 40 million out of Ed's pocket, maybe a bit of the dividends, maybe say don't improve Old Trafford too much, we need these players. But I think they'd be really important. What about the squad? I hear you all say. Very important point. Obviously, with all these sales, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players leaving. When you're talking about culture and team ethic, that's probably not the best, with only 3 coming in. So what I would do is bring Dean Henderson back from loan, and I'd make him compete with David De Gea for the whole season. I'd say whoever does better will play in the Premier League, and the other one will become the cup goalkeeper, and I would keep them that way. I wouldn't rotate them in and out unless they were doing particularly poorly or had a really bad attitude towards football or the game. I'd promote Ethan Led, centre-back Mengi, Garner and Hannibal. And obviously Chong's gone out on loan, but those players I'd bring in around the first team and they would see time on the bench. Now I think that's a really, really, really important thing that we do that with our young players, especially with the amount of money that Nicky Butt's been spending on them. He obviously values these players quite highly. Now, moving on to how my team would look. So if you look to my right here, this is how I view the team. David De Gea would start in goal, or it would be Henderson. I'm not convinced yet that Henderson is better than David De Gea because he's been playing at a team with far less expectation, but he might prove me wrong. I've then got Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back, with Ethan Laird as his understudy. Harry Maguire next to him, with Axel Tuanzebe as his understudy. Upamecano next to Harry Maguire, with Lindelof as his understudy and competitor. Luke Shaw at left back, with Williams as his understudy. I think left back in the next year or two would then be an area to potentially improve, because again, I'm not too sure with Luke Shaw's fitness and injury record. So again, that's potentially a position to look at in the future. I've then got Ndidi starting at CDM with Matic as his understudy. Obviously then Garner can come into that role in a few years' time. Bruno and Pogba ahead of him, not sitting next to him, ahead of him, because indeed he's mobile enough to do that role and has done for Leicester. I'd have Scott understudying for Bruno and Fred understudying for Pogba. Obviously Hannibal can come in as and when, as he develops, but he's still very young, even though he's highly rated. Sancho would be on our right wing. Chong would be his understudy, but he's out on loan. I'd have Rashford. I'd have Marcus Rashford from the left. Hopefully he can improve his form, with Daniel James as his understudy. And I would then have Martial up front, with Greenwood as his understudy. Now, you might look at this and go, whoa, we're a bit weak there because Chon's out on loan. I think we could get away with 5 players here. And again, until January, we've got Agallo. I think the striking position could potentially become an area where we want to strengthen, maybe in January again or next summer. So a bit like the left back, I think striking options could potentially be where we look to go. Obviously, Erling Haaland would be the dream for me. Again, a very young player. He's fantastic, brilliant in the air, and it would transform how we could attack because we've then got the aerial threat. So Erling Haaland would be a wonderful dream signing for me. But I think for this summer, those 3 signings would certainly push us up the table another 10 or 15 points. And it would then be the season after where you could bring in a few more, where you'd really be looking for the challenge and the title challenge. So they're the signings I think we need for the transfer window. So please let me know what you think. Do you agree with those 3 signings? Do you think we need more? Does someone like a Jack Grealish need to come in, potentially? Or a Van der Beek that's been spoken about? So please let me know. Please subscribe. And I will certainly see you again soon. So thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.